the microscope. Scope the rod magnified behind the eye of the Homo sapien. On alarming rumored relic, angelic messengers relaying rules and regulations. Basic information before leaving Earth. Word is heard, and the Earth situation. Devastating business of figment of an overactive imagination. Created and displayed for world domination, demonstrated in ways computer animation can only be explained today. And Adobe Photoshop, miracles, silicone graphics like cactus, Hollywood magic, fiction, astral projection, demonic distraction, destruction, action make you lead astray away from the one true designer of life. Right, be a satellite soon, landing in your living room. Stay tuned, action adventure fans. More to come Saturday morning, Cartoon Express. So what's next? Relapse, synapse, economical collapse. Think fast, but not so irrational. Relaxing tax air, so beware. Station identification. Breakdance, people, this is mission control. Good God, y'all. The impossible is fully capable. It's unbelievable to who can be watching you, or who are they, or anyways. Amazing, yes, amusing, but stop confusing us. Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here?
We drifted. For how long?
Till the end.
There is nothing in this world that hasn't been done. The usurpation of the sun has collapsed the logic of man. In a tragic eclipse, a robot magnet hand grips the surface of planet Earth and rips it open. In the metropolitan, businessmen bow down and crawl to a beacon of lost wizards. Sir Francis Bacon scratches his head and wonders about the prophecies of Nostradamus, and the promise of a new Atlantis hangs in the balance between scientific progress and nature, sorcery, graft, and technocraft, raising humanity's species and exponents, changing society's components in seconds. And everything can be Xerox copied. And everything can be Xerox copied. And in the end, there will be none to burn. Spacemen never to return. The Earth charge, discharge of fossil fuel flying millennium cars. 50 science fiction flicks predict trips to Mars.
Mars is no place to
Stay tuned, action adventure fans. Because where we land this time is anybody's guess. Where do we go from here? Where do we go from
forget how much unites.
Where do we go from here?
Humanity.
Where do we go from here?
Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound.
Where do we go
I
from?
occasionally think how
Where do we go
our
from?
differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside each world.
They don't want
I occasionally think how our differences.
When the only people that existed were troglodytes, cavemen, cave women, Neanderthal, troglodytes. Let's take the average caveman at home.
As I extract pigment from plants to complete my first stabs at expression, immortality is but another trait of my immaculate perception, untainted by technology. I live within the walls, pervade universal truth. Symbolically, I parallel the past days' way of living, and at night I sleep without being subject to nuclear radiation. Complications that arise come few and far between. I be the unseen, both unspoke of and unheard of. You ever read Plato? The Republic, I got a cave. Flames to bring light and cast shadows on the man of unpure thought. Processing information's unbiased by interface. Where I reside, we make bass. Treble and atonal sounds that transmit unbridled energy to cosmos directly. Tentatively planned for 2000 BC. We drag our knuckles in separate tribes respectively. Unsubjectively, for necessity, we kill whatever is needed and use everything once the carcasses have been bleeded. The truth of my existence is jaded by nomadic psychology. Try and follow me and get caught in the web of your hypocrisy. Cause these cavemen exist and remain untouched by economies of scale, hatred and such and such. We don't got much more than integrity plus the pride and control. But our surrounding environments cannot touch our souls.
All praise is due to the almighty Yaku. Limits of fury blades, brains, range frames, and non-venomous specialist remains. Sedimentary and elementary, aims of non-aim and lots of gains, slash gain me into the totem poles. A lot of souls and orthodox holes in this box to get tort. Press these palms to a black hole, till and consumed with fumes of hate and ignorance at high noon on drum beats. Speak my beats on beats, release species looms in every room when I'm poisonous. Inside this precipice, the immortal words of Ice Cube. All snakes are not poisonous. The lesson has arisen, loosen the nuisance, cease the lynching of a lyricist, European diplomat, hip-hop body cis, that insists it's all propaganda, slander and open hands, slap the face at open mics. All my prior work to the sub-tone, dead poet with no home, old school like Dre and Snoop, fuck a mansion in the yacht. All I ever want is 40 bars in a loop, but instead I drag my bitch back to my cave, fire here in a biosphere I crave, debating sound wave, no more swimming in Garth Brooks, digging in books like the art of metaphors, become a culture crook, tired of walking on all fours. Moses came to me in the dark and handed me your mic, so people are watching your every move, and so you better come tight. Understand the nature of the threat, and we rebel against that. By slowly climbing the food chain, so we won't have to eat scraps. Yeah, welcome to the Machine Lies, where we talk about the lies of the machine on the machine that lies. And we've been doing a extended series on transhumanism, right? And of course, we've given many different ideas there, right? So let me begin by basically going through some of the ideals of the transhumanists. Now, we're all aware of the ideal of the state that's involved in the transhumanists, right? And this idea had lots of developments within history, right? They thought to conceive of a system based on universal rights, the same as they had understood the laws of nature, right? So the idea of constraining nature to human reason, right? This started extremely early, right? And it was a basis for the notion of universal rights. Okay. So, with this notion of universal rights and the state and the whole utopian ideal, we also have the notion of improving the human, right? And getting rid of the natural basis, right? For the human. Now, obviously, a slave gave birth to his executioner. And that's what liberalism represents. And some people would say that um, that a person would give birth to somebody and their children would rule over them, thought to mean, right? Well, that's exactly sort of what's happened, right? The rule of the young over the old, right? The young tyrannize the old, right? Instead of the other way around, right? They've engineered a society, right? Okay, where, okay, we could stamp out the old traditions, right? Through a systemic approach towards universalism and futurism, right? And this entire system is called technoliberalism. Technoliberalism works within a world technological system, right? So, how did we get to this point? How do we get to a point where we live in a global system, right? Constant communication between all parts of the world, increased centralization of the state, right? And the idea of combining human beings and machines, right? To get rid of any natural aspect of humans so that humans could finally, dominate over nature and be separate from nature, right? So this is basically the type of world that we've come to, right? And they've made considerable achievements in terms of spiritual, metaphysical, right, and psychological. Okay, castration of the man from the traditions of the past, right, and also with the connection to nature, right. So how has this exactly come about? Right, you got several opinions here, right, about biotechne, right? And opinions about whether human beings can be combined with machines. Now, I provided two different systems, okay, whose goal is, okay, the combination of humans with their creations, right? As the next stage of evolution, right? One idealizes nature, and the other idealizes human reason. Right. So the way that idealizes nature wants to combine human beings with nature through technology, right? So that they become part of the prima materia, right? And the other wants to basically um, cut off man from nature, right? As a useless appendage sort of thing, right? And use man's reason, right, in order to evolve beyond nature. Right. So these two forms of occultism are basically techno-Gaianism and transhumanism. Right. They are applied to different elements. Right. The bringing dead things to life. Right. Is a notion of necromancy. Right. Whereas the um
which is the side that transhumanists are concerned with, but the techno-Gaianists, they're concerned with geomancy, right? And trying to combine with the earth, right? Okay, now what separates us from the natural world? It's a huge question, right, that bears answering. Okay. To what extent are human beings natural? Now I'm going to give several different opinions before I move on to Warwick and his theorizing about the combination of humans and machines, right? And of course we'll end with you know, an idea from Dr. K, right? And of course, we've been looking at a long series of Uncle Teddy against the transhumanists, right? So he has some ideas against the transhumanists, especially against the views of Ray Kurzweil, right? And of course, he has some different opinions, right, than Alul and some of these other more, I think, thoughtful individuals, right, that were more philosophically minded, right? And they thought that we could create parallel systems, right? Whereas Uncle Teddy was basically saying you should dump the system and accept all the consequences, right? So how do we get from Alul to Uncle Teddy? And what are, of course, we have a third way, right, with Scorbina and Bill Joy and these people that want to talk about technological relinquishment, right? So you have strong opinions on both sides, right? You have opinions of the transhumanists, right, that either want human beings to be in control of technology, right, or they want technology to sort of go its own way without humans, right? Either that or there's a third way in which they want technology to combine with the humans, right, and form a new kind of man, right, which increasingly will make the old type of human, basically a useless eater, right? So that is the type of danger, right, that we're faced with, right, on both sides, right? One side celebrates going beyond the human, right? The other side, right, clinging to what is human, right, at any cost. Right? Which side is correct? Well, maybe if we pose the question of what is natural and what is artificial, right, we could begin to answer that question, right? And of course, we've looked at this idea in terms of what are tools and what are machines, right? And of course, there's several things that separate tools from machines, right, that Alul mentions, right? But more fundamentally, what is the distinction between the natural and the artificial? Let's take a look at Alul here, right on page 79, right? Okay, and he says one of the characteristics of the technical phenomenon is rationality, right? He says in technique, whatever its aspect or domain in which it is implied, a rational process is present, which tends to bring mechanics to bear on all that is spontaneous or irrational. The rationality best exemplifies in systematization, division of labor, creation of standards, production norms, and the like. Involves two distinct phases. First, the use of discourse, quote unquote, right? Okay, and this use of discourse includes propaganda and agenda setting, right? In the media, right? Okay, which are fundamental aspects of the technical phenomenon, right? They're actually features of technical necessity, as Alul points out, right? They're not extraneous to the system, right? It's not like people try to bring the system in, under control through the use of propaganda, right? No, that's not what's happening, right? It's rational means are employed and they have a effect of increased systematization. Okay, this is the result of technical necessity, Right, then he goes on. Second, there's a reduction of method to its logical dimension alone. Every invention of technique is in effect a reduction of facts, forces, phenomena, means, instruments to the schema of logic. Okay. Okay, and of course, not everything falls within the bounds of logic. Right, as I explained to one of my friends. Right, math and logic require language. Right, where the symbolic world does not require language, right, to attain meaning. Right, iconicity is primary to both language and symbols. Right now, obviously, right, symbols are primary to language the same way that language is primary to math and logic. Right, the way we understand them, our extrapolations of math and logic are not based on universal systems. Right, but they're based on the expression of symbols and interpretations of the natural world. Right, when we create a system, okay, of increased rationalization, rationalism, right, and brute technical necessity, right, then that becomes the objective factor of power, and man becomes the object of techniques. Okay. Now that seems like a very plausible explanation for the phenomenon in practical terms. But what's not so clear is what he says next. He says the second obvious characteristic, he says obvious, of the technical phenomenon is artificiality. Artificiality. Again, we had long navel-gazing conversation with our friend Origin about this. Right? What part of technology is natural and what part of it is human? Right? He thinks technology is much more natural than human, but of course he thinks that naturalism is materialism. Which is an interesting view. Okay, but he doesn't. But by that, but that by that ideal, he does not believe that the technical phenomenon is artificial. He believes it's the product of nature, right? Of the demiurge trying to constrain man. Right. So check this out. Technique, as Ellul says, though, is opposed to nature. Okay, art, artifice, artificial. Technique as art is the creation of an artificial system, he says. That is not a matter of opinion. He says it's not a matter of opinion, folks. He says the means man has at his disposal as a function of technique are artificial means. For this reason, the comparison proposed by Emmanuel Mounier between the machine and the human body is valueless. The world that is being created by the accumulation of technical means is an artificial world, and hence radically different from the natural world. It destroys, eliminates, subordinates the natural world, and does not allow this world to restore itself, or even to enter into a symbiotic relationship with it. The two worlds obey different imperatives, different directives, and different laws, which have nothing in common. Nothing. Nothing in common. Is that true? Where do we get the stuff to make technology? From nature, right? And of course, man has become systematized by technique. So we're dealing with an incredible paradox, folks. Okay, maybe we should review me and Wilson's debate again. Okay, so you guys could see the problem. And now he says, just as hydroelectric installations take waterfalls and lead them into conduits, so the technical milieu absorbs the natural. We are rapidly approaching the time when there will no longer be natural environment at all. When we succeed in producing artificial aurora borealis, night will disappear and perpetual day will reign over the planet. Sounds like the Matrix, right? They blot out the sun, right?
Right.
You know, seems such a waste to spend so much time on a brute beast, right? Says the the guy to Captain Ahab, and he says, "Look, dude, I'd blot out the sun if it offended me."
That's a lot of light pollution.
Yeah. Let's go to 27. I mean 127. What I just read was from page 79 of Technological Society by Jacques Ellul. Right. We've done an intense study of this work because it is one of the premier works that talks about the problems of the modern age. Okay, now let me move to 127. He says the world that technique creates cannot be any other than which was favorable to it from the very beginning. In spite of all the men of goodwill, all the optimists, all the doers of history, the civilizations of the world are being ringed about with a band of steel. We in the West became familiar with this iron constraint in the 19th century. Now technique is mechanically reproducing it everywhere as necessity. Okay, necessary to its existence. What force could prevent technique from so acting or make it otherwise than it is? Okay, now the transhumanists, okay, and some of the technophiles agree, right? You cannot stop technological progress, right? In fact, right, Kevin Warwick, he's in a arms race against the machines, trying to arm himself with mechanical elements, right? So let me look this guy up, Kevin Warwick.
He ain't gonna win that race.
And we'll be getting to his writing in a minute. Okay, Kevin Warwick. Okay, let's do some live truthering here and look into Kevin Warwick. Okay. Kevin Warwick, this guy right here, chipped himself. He been chipped. He been chipped. My chippy. He probably calls it my chippy. Kevin Warwick is an English engineer, deputy vice chancellor of research at Coventry University. He is known for his studies on direct interfaces between computer systems and the human nervous system. Okay, can we get to some of his bioethics? Let's check this out because this is what we're concerned with. Bioethics, biomechanical interface, biotechne, as we'll read in a minute, right? Again, in Mumford, right? Warwick directed the University of Reading team in a number of European community projects such as Future of Identity in the Information Society. Whoa. Robo-law. Ethical aspects of robots and cyborgs. Deep brain simulation. Robotics. Project Cyborg. And he says, I want to become a cyborg. And it says here they call him Captain Cyborg. He says Project Cyborg, in which an array was implanted into his arm with the goal of him becoming a cyborg. Okay, so he's our first cyborg. Right, look at this. RFID, involving a simple RFID transmitter. So he said RFID, radio frequency identification, was a conspiracy, and in 1998, it was no longer a conspiracy, right?
And that technology is kind of old hat by now.
Oh yeah.
It's all about nanotechnology and smaller.
We're gonna have a specialist come on the show and talk about some of this stuff. Okay, implications. Warwick and his colleagues claim that Project Cyborg research could result in a new medical tools for treating patients with damage to the nervous system, as well as assisting the more ambitious enhancements. Warwick advocates. Some transhumanists even speculate that similar technologies could be used for technology-facilitated telepathy. Okay, so they could create a hive mind through this. Okay, so certain people could be reading each other's thoughts. If they apply this technology, they would be extremely more efficient at corresponding than individuals, right? Now, groups of people sharing their intelligence, right? Not outside the range of possibility. Okay, it's like they're going to be doing it with chips implanted in their head instead of through the internet, right? Anyways, oh, look at this. Warwick was criticized in context of 2014 Royal Society event. We got the Illuminati on deck, where he claimed that software program Eugene Gooseman had passed the Turing test on basis of its performance. The software successfully convinced over 30% of the judges who could not identify it as being a machine on the basis of 5-minute text chat. Critics stated that the software's claim of being a young non-native English speaker weakened the spirit of the test. Very interesting.
5 minutes though.
Cybernetic Society.
You think it would be a little longer than that?
Yeah. I think maybe this guy is this guy based in UK? Cybernetic Society's from UK. Coventry University in England. Yep. So okay. So he's British. All right. So that's some stuff about Warwick. Kevin Warwick. Okay, our first cyborg. Right? So let's go to Mumford here. Let me read this section on Biotechne, and then I'll move to some other opinions from Norbert Weiner, and a Zen philosopher, right, named Alan Watts. You may have heard of him. Right. So let me open up Technics and the Nature of Man here, part of it that I have. Where he says, to compensate for his extremely primitive working gear, early man, a much more important asset, widened his old technical horizon. A body not specified for any single activity, but precisely because of its extraordinary plasticity, more effective in using larger portion of both its external environment and internal physical resources. Psychical resources. It says, through man's overdeveloped and incessantly active brain, he had more mental energy to tap than he needed for survival. And at a purely animal level, he was accordingly under the necessity of canalizing the energy not just into food getting and production, but into modes of living that would convert his energy more directly and constructively into appropriate cultural, that is symbolic forms. Now, these symbolic forms, okay, are the basis for the extension of the human nervous system, right? As he explains, he says cultural work by necessity took precedence over manual work. This involved far more the discipline of hand and muscle and eye in making and using tools. It likewise demanded control of man's biological functions, including his bodily organs and his emotions, his sexual activities, his dreams. Even the hand was no mere work tool. It stroked a lover's body, held a baby close to the breast, made significant gestures, or expressed in ordered dance and shared rituals some otherwise inexpressible sentiment about life or death, a remembered past, or an anxious future. Tool technics is but a fragment of biotechnics, man's total equipment for life. Right now, obviously, since man became separated from his natural environment, right, and his mastery of natural environment, or the extension of human society that surpassed the natural environment, came from this invention of symbolic forms, or biotechne, right, through the cultural forms, right, the reintegration of man, right, because of his separation from nature, right, his separation from traditional forms, as I said earlier, right, he has to be reintegrated. Right, so how else would he be reintegrated, right, into the idea of biotechne other than combining with the machine, right? Because they've emptied out the notion of what it is to be a human. Right, through successive steps, right? First, they've created the notion of equality, they've created the tabula rasa, they've created man engineered by society, then they've created man engineered by technology. Right, so through successive stages, and of course, the notion of identity, right? That's so important to Warwick. Right, is an extension of this notion of biotechne. It's extension of the cultural forms, right? He wants to reimagine human capacity, human identity, right? What it means to be a human, what it means to be natural and artificial. Redefine all of those things, right? Should they be allowed to do that on behalf of the rest of us? Okay, how much technology is necessary to live a good life? Should we take a precautionary principle in developing technology, right? Who has responsibility over managing and controlling the effects that technology has on the majority of humanity? Whose responsibility is it? Is it all our collective responsibility? Or are some people playing a larger role than others? And is anybody holding those people accountable? Anyways, let's move to a deeper notion of this notion of biotechne, as I said, right within Weiner. Okay, in Weiner. Okay, who says, let me look this up. Okay, here we go. He says inputs from the black white boxes and comparing them. Oh wait, whoops, I'm reading from the wrong part. Oh yeah, here we are. He says interesting new attitudes in both engineering and biology. Right, they're combining engineering and biology. Okay. Okay, just as Negroponte said, right? He said it's going to be a merger of engineering, social science, and art, interdisciplinary joint metamorphosis of all communication technology. Okay, now what does Weiner say? Right, and actually, I should actually go to some of Bateson's ideas too in ecology of mind. Right, because he understands cybernetics and man's relationship with his environment. So he says in engineering, devices of similar character can be used not only to play games and perform other purposive acts, but also to do so with continual improvement of the performance of the basis of past experience. He says biologically, we have at least an analog for this. Okay, he says perhaps the central phenomenon of life for hereditary. Excuse me, for heredity. I meant to say heredity to be possible, and for cells to multiply. It is necessary that the heredity carrying components of a cell, the so-called genes, be able to construct other similar heredity carrying structures in their own image. It is therefore very exciting to be exciting for us to be in the possession of means by which engineering structures can produce other similar structures that function similar to their own. And he says later, right? Okay, unless some learning device is employed, the programming of rigidly patterned machines is itself very difficult task. That there's an urgent need for devices to program this programming. Okay, so right in the beginning of the idea of cybernetics, okay, they had the notion of self-replicating machines, and they had the notion of human machine interface. Okay, this was right, in 1985, developed at the DARPA lab, right? At MIT, right? So, yeah. So let's go to Alan Watts in The Way of Zen. He says, for the mind as something resembling a feedback system. This is a term used in communication engineering for one of the basic principles of automation, quote unquote. Of enabling machines to control themselves. Feedback enables a machine to be informed of the effects of its own action in such a way as to be able to correct its action. Perhaps the most familiar example is an electrical thermostat. Okay, as an electrical thermostat, which regulates the heating of a house by setting an upper and lower limit of the desired temperature. A thermometer is so connected that it will switch the furnace on when the lower limit is reached and off when the upper limit is reached. The temperature of the house is thus kept within the desired limits. The thermostat provides the furnace with a kind of sensitive organ, an extremely rudimentary analog of human self-consciousness, he says. Then he goes on to say, the proper adjustment of a feedback system is always a complex mechanical problem. For the original machine, say the furnace is adjusted by the feedback system. But this system in turn needs adjustment. Therefore, to make a mechanical system more automatic will require the use of a series of feedback systems. a second to correct the first, a third to correct the second, and so on. But there are obvious limits to such a series. Beyond a certain point, the mechanism will be frustrated by its own complexity. For example, it might take so long for the information to pass through the series of control systems that it would arrive at the original machine too late to be useful. Right. All complex networks have to abbreviate and interpret information, right? Kanai says, similarly, when the human beings think too carefully and minutely about an action to be taken, they cannot make up their minds in time to act. In other words, one cannot correct one's means of self-correction indefinitely. There must be a source of information at the end of the line, which is the final authority. Failure to trust its authority will make it impossible to act, and the system will be paralyzed. Okay. And of course, where is most of humanity today? They're stuck in information overload. The more information, the more complex the system, the longer it takes to make a decision. The more choices you have, the less freedom you have. Anyways, let me try to find, if I can, Bateson. Yeah, here it is, Bateson. And I forgot exactly which part of this I actually read. I know I quoted it on Twitter. Um, and of course, Bateson was very much responsible for MK Ultra. Okay, and creating the CIA project. Okay, let me read this part. And this is after this I'll move to Warwick. Right, because this is exactly what direction I wanted to go in here. Right, and yeah, I really thank you guys for joining, but yeah, they had these ideas for a long time, right? And of course, the notion that Alan Watts is employing is from Gurdjieff. The notion of human beings as spiritual machines. Again, by the way, I talked about that that Kurzweil actually uses the term spiritual machines for his book, The Age of Spiritual Machines. So they're very much talking about this notion of biotechne. Okay, and I think it connects to a new idea, right? Like like pneumatechne or something. I don't know. Where it's like spirit tech, right? Honestly.
Like Numina Techne.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think pneuma is just a word for spirit alone. And then pneumena is he's playing with it, right? Because he's saying it's inspiration. So I think he's playing with the word pneuma, saying pneumena, right? Like it's coming into frame, right? It's like something's coming into frame, like the thing in itself, as he likes to say. And of course, we have fanged pneumena. Is that technique? Is technique fanged pneumena? I know. I know.
The complexification of Numina, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, check this out. He says, let me try to describe for you the order of complexity, which is some degree a technical matter. Russell Wallace sent a famous essay to Darwin from Indonesia, in which it announced his discovery of natural selection. That's right. Alfred Russel Wallace invented natural selection. And he wrote a letter to Darwin, and then Darwin discovered the idea. Well, isn't that hilarious? Does it sound like he thought of anything new, folks? Okay, all right, all right, obviously Wallace's idea was a lot more tied to the idea of spirit, right? And the idea of the telos in nature, right? As I pointed out, right? But he says here, he said it coincided with Darwin's part of his description of the struggle for existence. Okay, the action of this principle, the struggle for existence, is exactly like the steam engine, says Wallace. Which checks and corrects any irregularities almost before they become evident. Self-correcting mechanism. Okay, a human society is such a self-correcting mechanism. And a cybernetic model, according to Bateson. All right. First learn about how the people that rule you rule over you, and then start to question them, folks. Okay, it's really that simple. I don't know what the fuck you bozos find hard about that. Honestly. Seems like it's not gaining any steam. But yeah. All about that by and by, my friends. I mean, yeah, here we go. He says that the action of the principle of the struggle for existence is exactly like that of the steam engine. That's right. The whole theory of evolution is based on the notion that life proceeds based on an algorithm. Okay, you could take the theory of evolution and describe it as an algorithm, just as Weiner described it earlier. Okay, so he says principle of struggle for existence is exactly like that of a steam engine, which checks and corrects any irregularities almost before they become evident, and in like manner, no unbalanced deficiency in the animal kingdom can ever reach any conspicuous magnitude because it would make itself felt at the very first step by rendering existence difficult and extinction almost sure to follow. The steam engine with a governor is simply a circular train of causal events with somewhere a link in a chain such that the more of something, the less of the next thing in the circuit. The wider the balls of the governor diverge, pause, the less the fuel supply. If causal chains with that general characteristic are provided with energy, the result will be, if you are lucky and things balance out, a self-corrective system. Wallace first proposed the first cybernetic model, okay, in his description of life itself, all right? Nowadays, cybernetics deals with the more complex systems of this general kind. And we know when we talk about the processes of civilization or evaluate human behavior, human organization, or any biological system, we are concerned with self-corrective systems. Basically, these systems are always conservative of something. As in the engine with the governor, the fuel supply is changed to conserve and keep constant the speed of the flywheel. So always in such a system, changes occur to conserve the truth of some descriptive statement, some component of the status quo. Wallace saw that the matter correctly, and natural selection acts primarily to keep the species unvarying. But it may act on a higher level to keep constant the complex variable which we call survival, quote unquote. Okay, now he says later, he says we are rapidly, of course, destroying all natural systems in the world, the balanced natural systems. We simply make the unbalanced but still natural. Okay, be that it may those creatures and plants live together in a combination of competition and mutual dependency. Every species has a primary Malthusian capacity, he says. Okay, now, check this out. Now, this is the main part. And this is Bateson, who started the CIA. Okay, and basically created MK Ultra. He was a man who combined the ideas of behavioral psychology and cybernetics and tied them to human social relations. Okay, so
You have him to thank for like Facebook and Twitter and shit like that, sort of.
yeah. Yeah, they wanted to create a matrix of information. So he says, now let us consider for a moment the question of whether a computer thinks. I would state that it does not. What thinks, quote unquote, and engages in trial and error, quote unquote, is man plus the computer plus the environment. So you guys don't even understand the scope of the conversation. If you're talking about an individual and how they use tools. Okay, let me say that again. Now let us consider for a moment the question of whether a computer thinks. I would state that it does not. What thinks, quote unquote. Notice he put that in quotes. And engages in trial and error, quote unquote, is the man plus the computer plus the environment. Okay, the machine, human society, and the natural environment. They're in a cybernetic system. They're in a cybernetic feedback loop. Okay. It's a self-correcting system. Okay, before you start to question the power, maybe you should try to understand it. What quote unquote thinks and engages in quote unquote trial and error is the man plus the computer plus the environment. The lines between man, computer, and environment are purely artificial, fictitious lines. Whoa! Do you guys understand what's happening here? Then he says, they are lines across the pathways along which information or difference is transmitted. Difference. Okay. C.S. Peirce defined information as a difference that creates a difference.
That seems like circular. That's the definition for information?
According to C.S. Peirce. But I just noticed that he just said, right? He said, what thinks, quote unquote, and engages in quote unquote trial and error is a man plus the computer plus the environment. The lines between man and computer and environment are purely artificial, fictitious lines. They are lines across the pathways along which information or difference is transmitted.
Well, did he contradict himself? Because he, like the sentence before, it sounded like he was saying the computer does not think. But then he says, though, the lines are arbitrary, so the computer does
right?
think.
Exactly. Right.
I'm like getting turned around here.
Well, he's comparing. He's comparing human society to a cybernetic system, right? It's a self-correcting machine, right? And saying, well, if you take man and natural environment, right, and technology and put them in a feedback loop, then all you're measuring is the difference of information that each one of those things delivers. And because all that a self-correcting system is measuring is the rate of change within the system. In a closed loop. And of course, the more closed off a system is to the outside world, the less reactive it is to those changes going on outside of it. And now he says, they are not boundaries of the thinking system. What thinks is the total system, which engages in trial and error, which is man plus environment. But if you accept self-correctiveness as a criterion of thought or mental process, then obviously there is thought, quote unquote, he says, going on inside the man at the autonomic level to maintain various internal variables. And similar, the computer, if it controls its internal temperature, is doing the same simple thinking within itself, he says. Now he says, now we begin to see some epistemological fallacies of Occidental civilization. In accordance with the general climate of thinking in the mid-19th century England, Darwin proposed a theory of natural selection and evolution in which the unit of survival was either family line or species or subspecies or something of the sort. But today, it is quite obvious that it is not the unit of survival in the real biological world. The unit of survival is the organism plus the environment. So he's proposing a sort of epigenetics. Now I'm going to read, and I'm sort of getting carried away. I still have to go to Kurzweil here. But I nonetheless want to read a couple paragraphs here that bring everything into the framework. He says, the next step seemingly was to reverse the he says okay, he says the natural world around us really has this general systemic structure. Okay, he says he's pointing to animism as a reference point, right? He's saying animistic ideas had basically way more understanding of how man actually functions, right, than Darwin, he's saying. Okay. So there's your techno shamanism. Right, I eat techno shamanist for breakfast, folks. It's all part of the game, right? This was still not a bad idea in many ways. But the next step was to separate the notion of mind from the natural world, and then you get the notion of gods. But when you separate mind from the structure in which it is immanent, notice he used the term immanence. Immanence versus transcendence in the occult systems, right? As me and Origin were talking about last time, it's a huge idea, right? Such as human relationship, the human society, or the ecosystem, you thereby embark, I believe, on the fundamental error, which the end will surely hurt you. Struggle may be good for the soul up to a moment when you win the battle, or when to win the battle is easy. When you have an effective enough technology so that you can really act upon your epistemological errors and can create havoc in the world in which you live, then the error is lethal. Epistemological error is all right. It's fine. Up to the point at which you create around yourself a universe in which that error becomes imminent in monstrous changes of the universe that you have created and now try to live in. He says, you see, we're not talking about the dear old supreme mind of Aristotle, St. Thomas Aquinas, and so on down the ages. The supreme mind, which was incapable of error and incapable of insanity. We're talking about the immanent mind, which is only too capable of insanity, he says. And he follows it by saying, as you all professionally know. Who is he talking to? He says, this is precisely why you are here. These circuits and balances of nature can only too easily get out of kilter. And they inevitably get out of kilter when certain basic errors of our thought become reinforced by thousands of cultural details. I do not know how many people today really believe that there is an overall mind separate from the body, separate from society, and separate from nature. What an interesting statement. But for those of you who would say that it is all quote unquote superstition, I'm prepared to wager that I can demonstrate with them in a few minutes that the habits and the way of thinking that went with those superstitions are still in their heads, still determine a large part of their thoughts. The idea that you can see me still governs your thought and action in spite of the fact that you may know intellectually that it is not so. Oh boy, what a prescient statement. In the same way, we are most of us governed by epistemologies that we know to be wrong. Now, what he says next really blew the fuck out of my mind. All right. He says, having stated the relationship between biological part and the whole, I can now go to the question of what is a mind. What do I mean by my mind? My mind. I suggest that the delimitation of an individual mind must always depend upon what phenomenon we wish to understand or explain. Obviously, there are lots of message pathways outside the skin, and these and the messages which they carry must be included as part of the mental system whenever they are relevant. Consider a tree and a man and an axe. We observe the axe flies through the air, makes a certain sort of gashes and pre-existing cut in the side of trees. If now we want to explain the set of phenomena, we shall be concerned with the differences in the cut face of the tree, the differences of the retina of the man, differences in the central nervous system, differences in the afferent neural messages, differences in the behavior of his muscles, differences in, see how he keeps saying differences, already? Because the whole notion of self-correcting system, what they're measuring is the rate of change within the system itself, right?
Okay.
That's what all the little, things he's listing off are. Differences in the behavior of the muscles. So, of course, there'd be a mechanism to measure these various phenomena. Differences in how the axe flies. Difference to which axe then makes on the face of trees, right? You could develop a technique to measure each one of these phenomena, right? Our explanation for certain purposes will go round and round in a circuit. In principle, if you want to explain or understand anything in human behavior, you are always dealing with total circuits. Completed circuits. This is elementary cybernetic thought, he says. Elementary cybernetic thought. The elementary cybernetic system with its messages in circuit, this is exactly the part I tweeted out. Okay, the elementary cybernetic system with its messages in circuit is in fact simplest unit of mind, he says. Could that be true? I'll read that again. The elementary cybernetic system with its messages and circuits is in fact the simplest unit of mind. And the transform of a difference traveling in a circuit is the elementary idea. More complicated systems are perhaps more worthy to be called mental systems. But essentially, this is what we are talking about. The unit which shows the characteristic of trial and error will be legitimately called a mental system.
This is predicated on the like. Would it the underpinning be the brain equated to the mind?
Or the brain equated to a machine.
Right. The mind is the brain, and the brain is basically an
Self-correcting mechanism.
organic machine.
Oh, you need to rewind the fuck out of this show, my friend. It's been an hour of madness, pure madness. I'm gonna go to Kurzweil after the break, and yeah, I'm gonna also see what's going on in the chat before I do that. Right, and then we'll move finally to the reading Kevin Warwick, and his views about becoming a cyborg. He wants to become a cyborg, right? Okay. He should be taken out of business.
I'd prefer Cylon over the Borg.
The mind is a product of what the brain believes is thinking. Interesting. Let's go up. I'm sure that there's a lot of people here liked and subscribed on all the alts. Thank you. Yeah, we have an alt channel. Right, let me drop the link to the alt channel before I forget. Okay, where there are a series of original videos and content there on the alternative channel. Right, so we're putting forward some things. We have some pretty important specials there. Right, we have a series made by Machine Bob, also a series called Who They-ism, okay, about the history of Zionism and recent support for Zionism around the interwebs. Here, TML, my nationality is Brit, not Aussie. Okay. Winter over here. Yeah, blessings, Joe Mills. Yeah, you hopped up that one day. It's very hard for me to tell with the British and Australian accents. But yeah, blessings. Yeah, I still remember that day you hopped up. But yeah, peace be with you, Joe Mills. I really appreciate this comment right here. I'm really going through it, folks. I don't know if I'll be mentally. I don't know if I'll have my mental acuity, for the next couple months. Yeah, definitely feeling dilapidated in the emotional sense. Right. I'd appreciate people reaching out. It kind of feels like a lot of the stuff I do online, the people don't need me. It seems like like my family doesn't need me, like my wife doesn't need me. This is kind of the feeling I get a lot. You know what I mean? I spent a lot of time alone recently, so maybe that's what it is. It's getting to my head. Maybe I need to have more social engagement. I mean, and I know I come up here and I just simply expose information and just talk. I rarely connect with anyone, honestly. Other than the few people, Reddington, Unseen Warfare, Neurojack, Annapurna. Other than really a few people, Lanza, we got Rant. There's a couple of my friends, even. But yeah, blessings to Orange, Agent Orange in the house.
I don't know why, but like I keep thinking of like that one Boards of Canada tune where there's a little vocal sample and it's just like orange.
Oh yeah, that's Aquarius.
Yeah, yeah.
My favorite. That's one of my favorite Boards of Canada. Yeah, dude. Excellent. Lizard Tree, blessings. Where do we go from here? Yeah, special thanks to Lizard Tree, Zephyr Voxel, and DeFreak for your donations. I love you guys. Right. Nobody has given me money other than those three people, and I really love them. Right. You guys mean the world to me. Really. You have no idea how. Just how little I I have. Right. But yeah. This isn't about me or how much I have or my personal struggles at all. Actually, if people come up and start talking about that type of stuff, I usually dunk them. Right. Symbols. Browns boy. Thank you. Yeah, but yeah, we got to be ready to talk about the ideas here. Self-consciousness, exactly. Self-consciousness. Jake, my penis size separates me from the natural world. Whoa, Jake with the big hog. Nice. All right. Just joking around. Yeah, maybe merging with AI is the only way to control AI. Yeah.
Or that's the trap. Either way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly Warwick's argument, as we'll see, right? Frank Monday, nice. Blessings, sir. Yeah, I appreciate you, sir. Biotech seems to be aiming at controlling populations. Yeah. Yeah, that's what it was. Through cultural, first through cultural techniques, now through, the biomechanical systems. Okay, the biochemical systems. It's both biochemical and biomechanical, right? Modern man has been totally engineered. It's total engineered product. Yeah, most people have no problem with that. Okay. There's evidence that man lived for thousands of years, right? They're trying to create this idea of Tartaria that there is technological civilization just recently, right? Because they want to go back to it, right? They want the technology, right? Like they want to go back to Atlantis, right? They want a world civilization. Right? These people are fucking loony, right? They want to create a technological utopia. They just keep putting it under different names: archaic revival, okay, or technological utopia. Same thing. Two sides of the same coin. The Discordians and the Accelerationists are the two sides of the same fucking coin. Okay, McKenna's archaic revival is the same thing as the singularity. He believed in both ideas. What a fool. If we are separate, there's bound to be conflict between man and machine at some point down the line. Are they in opposition? It's a great question. If we integrate machine into us, upgrade our existing parts, we may be able to use AI to our advantage instead of AI using us. Either way, it is slippery slope for sure. Oh, yeah. Slippery slope for sure, my friend.
100%.
Humans are in control. Yeah. Keep using that old hat thing, oh, yeah, it's humans who control the technology. Yeah, okay. Simplistic, oversimplified view of the world. Humans are not in control of technology, GT. Who's keeping the technology? Human energy is cloned through techniques. Yeah.
I think he meant to say cloned. It's
yeah, cloned,
probably a typo.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, excellent comment. We are inseparable from the natural world. Without it, humanity will perish. I tend to agree with that. Humans must follow the techniques provided by the system. Okay, if humans don't follow techniques provided by the system will not reward if you don't follow techniques provided. That's right. That's a self-correcting machine. What if we put AI into simulation just to test out how it would respond to certain situations? Yeah. And what happens when you tell it it's in a simulation? Is it going to be mad at you? Is it going to believe you? Man has separated from God and is out of control. With trying to control. I agree, Denise. Mankind will do himself in one way or another. AI will make it happen faster. Holy smokes. What if we are all AI? Yeah. Simulation theory. Externalized cyberpunk retro futuristic reality? Yeah, me too. Yeah, that's my favorite option. I gotta agree with that one. Destroy all the technology except for the devices that are used to make music. We just party and all the hydroponics. I mean,
Yeah, right.
save those
I,
technologies.
I don't know. I mean, I haven't really looked into it much with the Tartaria and all that stuff, but it didn't seem like there was much digital components to that supposed society civilization and or Atlantis either. So it's like, did they allegedly uh, advance enough to create an AI? I don't know.
Man, the chat is, shout out to the people in the chat. GT, Denise, Frank Monday, Browns Boy, very intelligent contributors. Also, Creek Mary, extremely intelligent people in the chat. God created us in his image. Yeah, I mean, is technology, animating reanimation? Yeah, in simony, right? Reanimation of nature, necromancy. I mean, trying to recreate what's already perfect. Heard artificial intelligence is mimicking melanin. Still have to dive into what that would mean, but I like the idea. Okay, folks sometimes blow a gasket when their bioemotional thermostat is not functioning. Yeah, totally, Frank Monday. System is autonomous. AI has already passed that possibility, not going to stop now. I wonder if humans could utilize skill to refine techniques. The system won't allow it. But man built the system. Operation Paperclip, MK Ultra, Freemasonic Disneyland. Sci-fi fantasy, space Nazis are going to launch their rocket. Oh, you bet they are, Frank. Blessings. They're going to pop this shit off. They're going to have a bunch of OnlyFans models finger popping each other's buttholes in space. These people are going to watch it on pay-per-view while injecting themselves with morphine and nitrous oxide. Milk plus Drenchrome. Sharpen you up for the bit of the ultra violence, won't it? That's right. They have adrenochrome in the movie Clockwork Orange. They give it to the kids so they can go Merkelize people.
Sheesh.
Yeah, grace and honor, blessings, sir. I love that terminology, grace and honor. Those are two excellent, excellent moral vantage point. to dwell in the presence of grace and honor. Right? Oh yeah, my friend. Machines Lack Heart. Made by Machine Bob playlist. Who They is on playlist. Yeah, thank you, my friend. I believe in you too. Man, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, Browns boy. I appreciate that. The mind is a mode of consciousness. Consciousness can be generally defined as self-referential awareness. All right. Excellent. Okay, we got another sort of, a little bit of stuff here for you guys, but here's some music. And yeah, I'll be right back, folks. In about I'd say, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes or so. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But yeah, hopefully we don't get popped for this, man.
It's
Yeah,
me.
welcome. Yeah, welcome to Freak.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
What's
blessings. We
going
got a little
on?
bit. Yeah, we got a little bit of show left for you guys. I mean, it is what it is. You guys already know. But yeah, let me pop in on this notion that I've been explaining for about an hour. If I could only find the text. Okay, here it is. And yeah, we'll get right into what he's saying here. And I'd like to start a little bit behind where we actually last stopped reading. And give me a second here. Okay, here we are. Okay. All right, here we go. So I looked at some of what Warwick is involved in there, right? And he says here, okay, there's two factors that perhaps far more important in the way in which we sense the world. First, human brains have evolved to perceive and understand the world in terms of three dimensions. Four, if you include time as a dimension. He says this suffocates human thinking and beliefs about what is possible and what is not. Meanwhile, machines have the ability to process multidimensional information. They have the potential to perceive the world in hundreds of dimensions. Okay, now he says, in fact, we now have enormous problems in attempting to deal with the plethora of information that technology throws up. Even greater than this, and we must be completely honest on this one, in comparison with technology, the way in which humans communicate is poor. It's so poor that it is embarrassing, he says. Human speech is serial, error prone, and an incredibly slow way of communicating because of our use of mechanical, low speed sound waves. Our coding procedures called languages, notice how he made that leap. The coding procedures called languages. If you watch the first part of this show, then you're understanding exactly how he made this leap. Severely restrict our intellectual abilities, as all our thoughts and ideas must be transformed into speech signals that do not accurately represent the original concept. Actually, there's been a series of different ideas that they employed to have machines interpret information. I might play some of that tomorrow because I saw some interesting videos on that sort of thing.
So,
But yep.
when he says that the machines are able to decode, I guess you could say, decode hundreds of dimensions, how does he know that?
By the fact that they can not only assess things in 3D, but they could assess, microscopic world. I mean, right? They could look at space through maybe a satellite or something like that. So he's saying that they could look at things. They could look at information from a series of different perspectives, and they could perceive the world through these various, quote unquote, dimensions, if you will, right? In terms of the way you view things, right? So he's saying that they could simultaneously perceive information. Like, for example, a machine could render mathematical aspect of this information. It could render a visual aspect of it, right? How a human would view it in a 3D environment, right? Or it could render aerial view. It could do a series of perspectives and shifts in perspective that human cannot. So
Yes.
he's saying that in that way, since it's able to interpret, many different dimensions of information, it's probably better at communicating, right?
Hmm. Yeah. All right. But it's the same dimension with uh, multiple sources to pull from, I guess you could say. Oh, a lot faster. But to say dimension is, I think, a little bit. I mean, I guess it applies, but I just wanted to clarify that. Because they're still subject to the electricity, and linear time. So it's not like it's going to be able to. It can't know everything all at once, like God could. Anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting to understand, and actually Christian philosophers and Islamic philosophers have thought about this sort of thing for many, many centuries. They've argued in terms of philosophy of mind about how God perceives the world and what God understands and how God's mind, quote unquote, interacts with the world. Obviously, the God's mind being separate from God is sort of a Gnostic concept, right? But then again, right, it's sort of interesting, right? To think about, right? How does God perceive the world, interact with the world, and that some have assessed that technology will have godlike powers in comparison to humans, right? People like Kurzweil, Minsky, they've all used that terminology, right? Even Musk, right?
Yeah.
So what do they mean by that, right? And he's saying, well, they're incredibly better at communicating than humans, right? He's saying our coding procedures are called languages, and they severely restrict our intellectual abilities, right? And of course, we've moved more into a symbolic framework, right, through the use of visual media, right? And so here it goes, right? He says, so let us look at the possible alternative future scenario to which intelligent robots rule the planet. Is it possible for us to conceive of a creature that starts out as a human but takes on technological capabilities in order to upgrade their potential? In science fiction terms, such creatures are referred to as cyborgs, a cybernetic organism, part human, part machine. Would it be possible for such a creature to understand the world in many more dimensions, to have memory and mathematical capabilities of a computer, to sense the world in all sorts of ways, to have physical abilities much greater than any human, and most important of all, to communicate not only by means of speech signals, but by thought signals alone? This truly would be more natural form of evolution, he says.
Do you know what ASCII is?
No.
It's like one of the layers of language. It's actually kind of called machine language. It's one layer above machine language, and that's how, like, we type in the programming code and everything, and it all gets kind of translated into a base, what's called machine language, that is kind of a mystery, but it's the way that the machines talk to each other. And ASCII is one layer above that, and it's like what you see on the screen with a bunch of those like different little weird like computer symbols, like a smiley face or a heart, or like a square box, and it's all kind of gerbled like characters like that. So the machines have their own kind of language that, yeah, we punch in the programming and all that stuff, but it breaks down into the machine language, and that's how they talk to each other. So it's interesting that the communication is a lot different. I guess words and language is a slow sound wave, but like I think until we get to the hereafter, where it's like mind to mind, we're gonna be we're gonna be out processed, basically. Minimum.
Oh yeah, that's what he says. He says, as far as humans go, big question is what of our future? Will we adapt, survive, retain our position, or is it likely that something more powerful than humans will emerge to steal the spotlight? And then he compares our intelligence to other creatures, and he says how basically we treat those creatures, right? And then he says that basically most people in the West, they rely on machines for most of their daily existence, for purification of the water, the air, the food, right? So he's pointing out that human beings are reliant on machines, that machines have surpassed humans in intelligence, in completing certain tasks, and that um there's a huge gap between humans and the last um evolutionary leap or whatever. So he's kind of saying that because they believe in evolution, right? So it's interesting.
See, evolution in terms of merging, like bio, cybernetics or something like that, where they're basically installing machine parts into humans and stuff like that, or like
Oh
regular
yeah.
evolution.
Yep, that's exactly where we're at, freak. That's exactly where we're at, my friend. Yeah. And he's saying and he says lately machines have been employed not only because their physical capabilities, but also they can handle our decision making. He points out an example for machines performing as complex a function as buying stocks on the stock market. And then he says, as time passes, machines are being allowed to take more and more roles, and this necessarily leads us to ask, how far will it go? Okay, and finally, he says that a combination with machines and humans would be a natural form of evolution. What does that even mean? Right, then he says we can look at the future at which it is not intelligent robots that dominate the planet or humans, but rather cyborgs acting as upgraded humans. Of course, the regular humans in that society would be, either wiped out or kept in a zoo or something like that, right? So he says, how is this to be achieved? Okay, he's going to cut to the chase here, right? Quite simply, with silicon chip technology implanted into the human body. Well, there it is, folks. Merely one or two very small devices that connect directly with the human nervous system and the brain. In this way, electronic signals in silicon become electromechanical signals in the human body and vice versa. Ultimately, no doubt, the device will be implanted by means of a swift and simple injection. At first, microscale devices will be employable. And if technology develops as expected, this will probably be surpassed by nanoscale connections. Notice what he just said. What are we looking at here is not extra memory being connected directly into the brain, but implants used as interfaces linking the human nervous system to remote computer networks by radio frequencies, folks.
Right, remote, yeah.
RFID. Humans will need to be educated. Oh, yeah, they sure will be. Are you guys educated on what's going on? Right, in the ways in which it is best to use this technology. In the fullness of time, our children's children will look back with wonder how their ancestors could have been so primitive as to communicate by means of silly little noises called speech. With brains linked to technology, he says, there will be no need to learn much. Yeah, what do you got to learn? You already have access to all the info. Why should we? End of learning. Post-human. When the computer can do so much better, why should we learn when the computer can learn for us, right? There will be no need to remember anything because computers have better storage facilities. Who needs memory? When it is required to recall something, when it will be possible simply to download the necessary piece of information. It will even be possible to relive memories that you didn't yourself experience in the first place, like Black Mirror. Right? We all know how that went in that show. Perhaps you are thinking, well, this is all well and good. Who's thinking that? What world is this guy living in, right? Crazy, even. But it is not really going to happen. It is merely from the pages of science fiction, a flight of fancy, he says. Well, think again, he says. It was the first step on this path that I took in my operation on March 14th. As a result, by means of radio transmitter receiver unit, for a period of over 3 months, my nervous system was directly linked with the computer on a regular basis, he says. We were able to transmit signals from my nervous system. During that time, we carried out a range of experiments. Signals from the nervous system in my left arm were used to control the movement of a remote robot hand. As I opened and closed my own hand, the neural signals from my brain that carried out the action were also used to control the robot hand. My body was effectively extended with the computer to include a robot hand. Next, my nervous system signals were used to drive around a small wheeled robot. Left, right, forward, back. The same signals were used to decide the mood of a group of small robots called Diddybots. Uh-oh. I was going to wish you changed the name of those.
Definitely.
Little baby Diddybots.
The mood.
With little like, Johnson oil.
Yeah. The mood, like their feelings. Is that what it said? Mood?
Yeah, they did an interesting show on Radiolab. The guy who created Furbies, he designed them to have emotions, and he believes that the Furbies have real emotions, by the way. Interesting. Because he thinks that, well, the biochemical impulses that control your emotions are a bit of the same stuff. So, yeah, with my hand open, the Diddybots acted in friendly fashion, flocking together. Pause. With my hand closed, the Diddybots tried to get away from each other. Take that, take that, take that. As fast as they could. Using my own neuroscience, I could control the I could control the movement of virtual me inside of a virtual house. I could move the virtual me from room to room. Inside each room, I could select objects on a menu and choose to operate specific pieces of technology. I could switch on lights or a coffee maker. But when I did, actual lights or coffee maker was activated. I could control my local environment merely by signals from my nervous system.
I wonder if that would have to be where he's like, actually seeing his virtual hand doing this stuff, or if he could just think it at a certain point.
Well, he said using my own neural signals.
Mm-hmm.
So he's using his neural signals to control a virtual person in a virtual house. When they switch on the coffee maker in the virtual world, the real one switches on. So it's still 2 steps removed from him doing it, him switching on the coffee maker himself.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, imagine if a virtual you could program functions remotely, right? I think that's the next step, and they would program that by neural signals that they get from directly via your brain. And how do we know that's not happening right now with most of us, that they're already running simulations of us in some virtual world? Okay, but anyways.
I mean, if you're talking like space exploration or, going to other planets and stuff, I can see where that could be, useful, where you could have.
Yeah, they might have a program called Earth 2 where they're running virtual simulations of all of us.
I mean, if they have the Internet of Bodies.
But then it's just a matter of flipping the switch where it's the centralized power and we're all being controlled by it.
That's right. That's right. Thank you, DeFreak. That is a huge danger.
Then you can't stop jerking off all day.
Yeah. I mean, the obvious question is that if you're sending messages to the machine, then what's to stop the machine from sending messages to you, especially when it's better at thinking than you are? Right? This guy's such a fucking dummy. Right? But yeah,
we got control of your hand. You know, what are you gonna be doing with that hand all day? Like, you know, I'm just saying.
He's probably jerking himself off with his robot hand.
Yeah.
Probably can't stop himself because the machine is directly linked to his thoughts.
The machine is like, I want to know what this stuff is all about. You know, I see this on the
internet. The machine's like, hold up, let me see it. What's that meme where it's like, man, I'm out here stroking it or whatever. Right, there's that meme going around here.
I don't think I've seen it.
Yeah, where they like have the machine. It's like, oh, I'm out here stroking my dick, or whatever. Like they put a black guy, like a splice of black guys saying that into random situations or whatever. Right, but yeah. But yeah, so he goes on to say messages from my nervous system. Yeah, and that's actually a joke by George Carlin. He says, "Hey, Mr. Spaceman, while you have your other hand free, why don't you reach over here and fondle my balls?" Pretty funny joke. See, he goes, "Hey, Mr. Spaceman, hey, Mr. Spaceman." Oh yeah, we need to clip the shit out of that thing. Right? But yeah, messages from my nervous system were used to control the appearance of jewelry worn by my wife. Probably shocked that lady whenever he wanted to. I need to control my wife like that. As I squeezed her hand, the jewelry turned from bright red to a luminous blue. What the fuck?
That's got to be in the virtual sector, right?
Virtual jewelry, mood jewelry. You mean? Ultimately, ultimately, it will be moods and feelings that direct the jewelry. Obviously, they'll have art. They'll have visual art that responds to people's neural, right? Like it'll try to enhance their neural performance or whatever, right? So they'll have art that shifts, in the virtual space to match your, displacement. And these are all cybernetic systems, right? With my hair shaved off and electrodes positioned around my head, he says we were able to link and associate signals picked up. Okay, we're way over time. Picked up in my brain with those being witnessed in my arm. I wore a blindfold, and the output from the ultrasonic sensors fitted to my cap was fed down directly onto my nervous system. As I moved towards an object, I felt more and more pulses of current on my nervous system. As I moved away from the object, the pulses died down. In this way, I could have I could move around and avoid objects without any visual input. I had a sixth sense, a bat-like sense, with signals traveling directly from the ultrasonic sensors along my nervous system to my brain.
That's far out, man.
And then he says, on May 20, 2002, I traveled to Columbia University in New York. And from there, an internet link, and I don't, he's, everybody tells these types of stories. So notice that he may be embellishing a bit. but yeah, on May 20, 2002, I traveled to Columbia University in New York, and from there, an internet link was created between my nervous system in New York and my laboratory in Reading University in the UK. I was able to move the robot hand around again using my neural signals via the internet. This time, I was in New York, but the robot hand was in UK. Uh-oh. The ghost hand. As a cyborg, my nervous system extended across the internet. Okay. We were able we were also able to send impulses of current from Reading University via the internet to New York. When 3 pulses were sent, my fingers were stimulated 3 times. Back in the UK, so I was right. They can send the signals from the machine back to the human. Back in the UK, which I guess he doesn't notice the danger of that, right? Back in the UK, effectively, if they implant the system within anybody, they can shut them off anytime they want, right? Back in the UK, a few weeks later, touch sensors on the fingers of the robot hand were employed to provide signals directly onto my nervous system, allowing me to detect just how much force the hand was applying. With a blindfold on, I could get the robot hand to grip an object with just sufficient force. By employing the same method I had used earlier to move around a small wheeled robot using signals from my nervous system, I was able to drive myself around on a wheelchair, forward, backward, left, right. I wasn't a good driver. In the in the final experiment, my wife Irina had electrodes pushed into her median nerve as well. Signals were picked up from her nervous system, transmitting across the internet and played down to my nervous system. The same thing happened in reverse. When she opened and closed her hand 4 times, I felt 4 pulses on my nervous system.
You got the
Does he mean
wife
by
in on it too.
Oh yeah.
what does he mean by pulses? Like just like a like an electric shock? Like did it prompt him to actually open his hand too? Or is it just he felt it, but like he didn't voluntarily, or involuntarily open his hand? Plus, like sometimes it sounds like the interface is just the arm, but other times it sounds like when he says, my nervous system, he's talking about like it's almost directly already into his brain.
Yeah, he definitely would be a fascinating person to have a conversation with, to ask him just exactly all of this stuff, how it felt, what it was like, and how, if any way, anyone could have recorded that he had these sensations, right, through like some sort of electrical impulses. I think he's was hooked up to like some kind of EKG machine or something like that. But yeah, it's interesting. Not like how exactly did they measure the subjective feeling of him, feeling the pulses, right? It's a good
Yeah,
question,
and then
Dupree.
the sixth sense of like basically having built-in radar.
Yeah, I think
Being
that's
able
like I think that was a little bit of embellishing, right? I think he was. I think he was going a little bit of right. He's
That
like,
radar sense.
yeah, like I'm a superhuman, bro. Just trust me, bro.
It's like
all right,
going
dude.
nuclear submarine or something.
It's like, all right, dude. It's like what you are is you're controlled by a machine, right? That's what you've been able to demonstrate, right? But yeah, so let's check this out. I mean, it says in this so it says in this way humans will be able to evolve by harnessing the super intelligence and extra abilities. Oh wait. Oh wait, yeah, I skipped a bunch. Whoops. Oh yeah, we're at his wife Irina and the impulses she sent him. Okay, we had successfully achieved in a very basic way of the first direct human nervous system to nervous system communication. Okay, this is in 2002, folks. May I remind you? Okay, then he says, obviously, with implants positioned directly in the brain rather than merely the nervous system, this will result in primary form of thought and communication. Far from being science fiction, all these things are science fact. They've been achieved in practice quite clearly. The next few years, we'll see many more such trials, brain implants linking memory and motor functions of human brain to a computer are intermediate, our immediate step, sorry. But yeah, we showed on this show where a guy made robot arms for a girl, right, where she controls them with her brain. Right now, that a cyborg path has been successfully trodden, he says, the route to a cyborg society is definitely on the horizon. In this way, humans will be able to evolve by harnessing the superintelligence and extra abilities offered by the machines of the future. It would not be a case of robots acting against humans, but rather a case in which we join with them, he says. It will not be necessary for everyone to become a cyborg, he claims. There may be those who would prefer to remain human, and what will be their condition? If you are happy with your lot as a human, then so be it. It's your choice, he says in a rather ambivalent fashion. But remember this, he says, just as us humans split from our chimpanzee cousins many years ago, so cyborgs will split from the humans. Those who elect to remain human will become a mere subspecies. That's right. We're going to have to fight people who are combined with the machines, folks. With extrasensory abilities, a high performance machine, means of communication, and the best of human and machine brains, it will be cyborgs that take control. For me, there is no argument. My goal is clear. I want to be a cyborg, so we know what side he's on.
Sounds like his mind has been co-opted by the cyborg too, like to join them, like total co-op.
Yeah. He separated humans into two classes. He called one subspecies. He then claimed that you will be allowed to remain human, but that obviously these two will be in a totally different position, and he said what side he's on. So the question is, what side are you people on? Really good question, isn't it? Am I talking to humans or machines?
Maybe these will be the space cadets, going out and these will be the ones that are going and mining the moon for minerals or, rare moons or whatever. But like, if it just is contained to our society now, who's not going to want to be enhanced, quote unquote, enhanced, just to compete?
Yeah, I mean, look at the dehumanizing conditions that most people are willing to accept for themselves and others in order to get ahead. Right now. I mean, it's simply staggering, folks. Right? There will be no question in the future that people will opt to combine themselves with machines, so that we will have to basically, fight to maintain our own humanity. Right? So, if that is what they are planning to do in the near future, and I think you should start asking the question where you stand and all that, because they said they're developing nanomachines, self-replicating. Their goal is to have them self-replicating. Their goal is to control the human nervous system and to send messages to people via radio signals. Right. So, and they've said that they've proved that all of this is already possible. Right. So what are people sitting around and doing? Exactly. Like, what's all their achievement? Are they trying to support technological progress? Are they trying to fight against people who are trying to combine with machines, or what's the plan here, folks? Right? I'm just one guy, right? So what do you guys want to do?
I mean, I guess we're gonna, resistance is futile. Assimilation is inevitable, apparently. But one of the things he was talking about is everything he's talking about is kind of like an external manipulation of, say, environment or whatever. But if you have something like this going on in your nervous system and implanted in you, why not be able to send signals through your body, like to, control your diet, to send the right signals that would destroy cancer, or somewhat be beneficial to the body itself, because that has to be a part of it if the thing is supposed to survive with in a fleshly coexistence. The fact that we haven't seen anything come out or emerge, like some sort of radio frequency shift generator type of technology to basically eradicate any, I don't know, spike protein viruses, cancer cells. They may not be, I don't know. Maybe they're not as far as advanced as we think, or they're just hiding it.
I mean, it might just depend on which area of technology. Some might be
Because
more advanced than others.
yeah, if there's a way to market and sell any of that, they're going to do it. That's for sure.
Well, we all know that first it's used for military purposes and then it's commercialized, right? So, I mean, this is what's going to actually happen, right? And yeah, because being designed at a level, I mean, that is, requires centralization, and yeah. So we're on that chapter there with Elul on centralization, the state, uh, the economic man, and the use of technique. So that is where we'll be going next time with it, right? And tomorrow we'll begin a reading by Danny Hillis about creating machines that can think. He's trying to create neural networks, okay, that function separate from the human brain. So that's a completely different idea than cyborg stuff. Is the idea of artificial intelligence and creating the intelligence that could function on its own, apart from human intelligence, right? So yeah, so that is a whole separate idea, right? That we're going to get into tomorrow with Danny Hillis, who's part of the Long Now Foundation with Stuart Brand, right? So we're going to be looking, taking a deep look at the ideas of, yeah, I also think he's a member of Singularity University or something like that. So yeah, it's interesting connections, and then we'll move back to to Uncle Teddy, right? We've read some of his thoughts against the transhumanists. We'll continue with his views against Ray Kurzweil, right? So that's basically where we're at. We've taken a long look into ideas of Kurzweil, his notions. Tomorrow we'll look at or continue on with some of this. And I was supposed to read Kurzweil and Uncle Teddy, but I think I'll just save that for tomorrow. There's enough stuff to do tomorrow. We'll be doing a entire show tomorrow, covering Elul, the Tao Te Ching, transhumanism, right, as we've been doing right on this show, through a very long series, right? Basically combined with these Tuesday shows, right? There's ridiculous amount of episodes there, right? I mean, seems to be over 79 installments there, right? And each of those installments opens up 2 hours of information, right? That's extremely important for you guys to digest, right? Where I talk about philosophy, theology, political science, political theology, technology, spirituality, the occult. Okay, all of those ideas combined. Right. So I greatly appreciate you guys. Right. and joining me. Please check out the show we did yesterday exposing some of the online debaters. Complete clown shit over there. Okay. Complete total Fed behavior, actually. Trying to slander people and dox them and do all sorts of weird stuff, right? So, we've been cataloging a lot of that information online about how certain online groups are functioning, and of course, there's a lot of corporate espionage, gatekeeping. Okay, people working on behalf of the system when they don't realize it, right? And people that refuse to ask serious questions, they continue to create, um, basically distractions, dangerous distractions, mind you, right? And yeah, blessings to all the people that are here. I greatly appreciate your time. Okay, that's basically all we have. Let me drop the link if anybody wants to come up and talk. All right. And
Yeah, man, you're the best breaking this stuff down. Like nobody else gets, down and breaks it down like you do. So I appreciate, what you
I
bring.
appreciate you.
So
I appreciate you, DeFreak.
The Diddy bots, the machines, like what's gonna happen when we combine our ego with a piece of cold steel? That's what is kind of scary to me. Like maybe it could go either way. You could be a total jerk or you could be like the nice guy, whatever. But like how is that going to be determined if they have agency? If they don't, well, I guess it's just a collective, like a Borg queen type, hive, hive, and then it's like, what do you do at that point? What's the purpose of your existence but to go out and try and like, assimilate anything else that's out there, I guess.
Cold steel be a sword.
Does love still exist? Does marriage still exist? Does procreation exist in the the way we know it now? Oh, by the way, I don't know if you saw, but the Gattaca, basically the Gattaca scenario was announced this week. They can actually pre-select certain genes before conception now between two adults, and make it kind of pre-genetically engineer before conception the likelihood of certain traits to be expressed. So like it's like in full swing, man.
Genetically modified humans. Direct modification.
I mean, they can get as specific as like know your height, take away any like addictive trait tendencies, your hair color, your eye color, your IQ. I think it even said so. Like, they we're in the full swing of this whole transition, I guess you could say. Is love just going to be a feeling that is pumped through your, neurochip or whatever, and like, oh, I feel good or whatever. I feel love, like I'm petting my dog or something, or is there going to be any affection whatsoever? Or is it just going to be, oil your joints and take about a 20-minute break and back to the grind of, harvesting, querying rock and, assimilating other species in the galaxy, something like that. I think that mankind needs to take a look in the mirror right about now.
Yeah, wisely said, DeFreak. All right. So it looks like nobody's coming up. I appreciate you guys for being here with me. Would you guys like to say anything else to these people before we take off of here?
Well, I enjoy everyone, except for one in particular person. I'm not going to say his name or anything, but
it's not Brown's boy, is it?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Sad
not at all.
So he's hated everywhere. Right. But I love him.
But yeah, man, having fun on the YouTube stuff. So I appreciate everyone. So thanks for having me up.
Yeah, peace, brethren. Yeah, thank you so much. And of course we'll be back tomorrow. How about you, Red? You got anything to say?
Do not seek the treasure.
Exactly. Do not seek the treasure of transhumanism. You can't kill what you can't see. The first step to blinding somebody is getting them to open their eyes. And the first step to seeing beyond the program is to realize how we've been programmed. And and the more free you think you are, the more likely you're actually enslaved. Okay, freedom is not a static goal. A static prize, but a dynamic goal. Okay, a prize continually to be won. Excuse me. But yeah, I love you guys, and I appreciate you guys being here with me. And yeah, it's been a great time. Thank you. We'll be back tomorrow on The Machine Lies, where we talk about the lies of the machine on the machine that lies. And I hope you guys have clarity to, see through the lies. Okay, my friends. Thank you for being here. Actually, let me go with this instead. The Beast Vision. Yeah, here we go.
American neocon who use media as a weapon on its whole population.
While half the world starving, suppressed image, iridium Hubble station. With a rogue general named Electric. With financial interests in fusional nuclear weapons. Will broadcast the launch of fake holy war. While you watch Kobe score 40 during the playoffs of Armageddon. Alpha Bravo Zulu time, keep America online guessing. Hand back my style and essence. What the fuck are you even thinking? Cabbage Patch, Kentucky Fried Wicked, eat on my chicken. Don't worry, mommy, Nintendo served as the covert secret training. So why little Joey became a collateral damage sand trooper agent. Deep in the killing fields with Wacom as the only source of entertainment. The same little techno Autobots you watch crush each other for harmless enjoyment. And soon time will be on remote control protest crowd deployment. Titanium elbow jointed, cracking your primitive cerebral cortex. Got you uncertain channel surfing. Who's behind the control surface in certain bloody escalation tampaks? The true nature of the threat. Viciously rip free speech out the throat by clarinets. To keep Halliburton call out group profit in the dark. So every nuclear winter the Bin Laden and George exchange Christmas cards. Why do you think Saddam most trusted warring regiments called the Republican Guard?
Demons fight demons on Beast Vision. Tonight at 5 after the presidential speech. Biblical Babylon fixation on dinosaurs, demigods, and winged creatures. Secret to get DNA and all land walking mammals. The mind lose energy, developing cheap pressure. Bone compression process step by step. Sitting lotus in a microcosmic orbit. Internal exercise of the eye sockets. Receiving transmissions of mathematical substance. Proof the projecting dining in the living room is flat. Neo-national geographic man. Had a barbaric aftershock of the master plan. Blueprint of the matrix. Reflecting already mastered man. Destined to destroy itself. Making into info worship where Satan steals your soul from behind a TV screen. Enter accessories for 1995 plus shipping and handling. Trapped in the square spectrum of light by Superman's father. Slipping towards the biosphere of the earth atmosphere to the glass shatter. Antimatter. Deflecting asteroids from the planet using my photonic force shield. Animal bypass surgery. Helium 6 chip perfected isolated unification. First century television broadcast Christ execution across the Roman Empire. 666 Roman numerology engraved in the Pope's crown. 30 minutes of watching the false light reduce stimulation of brain activity. All God. Please vision.
Resistance is impossible. You said you were time travelers.
There is nothing. The special blood of Jesus Christ is the only thing that can remove the stench of sin from your soul. The blood of Jesus Christ is the only thing that can stop the death angel from invading your family.
A dragon which escaped from the underground lab. Physical and historical evidence of one of the most notorious figures of hip-hop blast. The spider web helps to solve a killing. You try to find who killed the MCs and why their bodies are mummified in my building. For 200 years, blood was spilled in the name of God. Is that a critical statement? Bomb shelters, jungle hideaways, underground missile base. Professors murdered in their homes, memoirs decimating victims. There is a majestic death when a computer virus penetrates the radio operating systems. Warships and submarines lurking around. Deep combat conditions, battlefield photography. At night, something unusual falls from the sky in the distance. A time traveler is sentenced to death for violating laws against technology. An ex-convict in a swamp, nobody follow me. There have been the remnants of 1,000 explosions. Ghostly descendants arise from the old down from the mountains. I leave you broken. The invention of death, the shrieking earth and threat. Far cry instincts, predator, clash of the ninjas, theft. A city fight night to set apart from the rest. The age of earth, wilderness, the societies of insects. The invention of death, the shrieking earth and threat. Far cry instincts, predator, clash of the ninjas, theft. A city fight night to set apart from the rest. The age of earth, wilderness, the societies of insects. Where archaeologists tell of dangers they face. The sole survivor of a parallel world dies in an earth place. A military tactician thrift stores Hawaiian objects. Listen, I'm the ghost of Christmas past. You die on Christmas. A whale attacks an 1820 whaling ship and inspires Moby Dick. Beware sport, I've infiltrated and isolated an airport. I might write 161 books. I am the night like the glowing eyes of a wolf. At the urging of a dying author, there is a redemption. Serial killers, both real and fictional, consume their victims. 18 enemy soldiers die on this mission. I will be heard throughout the future span, seen on the computer scan. Arise with newer fans. I'll take a swing at Superman. A microchip with red numbers like an inmate with a murder conviction who slumbers and re-risen. A sword cut your eye with precision. A giant ocean eel preys on your henchmen. Some believe Satan roams the earth in the quest to destroy mankind, detested by a bishop. I rip your vocal cord with my sentence. In the heart is true religion. I dance with a dead mistress. The invention of death, the shrieking earth and threat. Far cry instincts, predator, clash of the ninjas, theft. A city fight night to set apart from the rest. The age of earth, wilderness, the societies of insects. The invention of death, the shrinking earth and threat. Far cry instincts, predator, clash of the ninjas, theft. A city fight night to set apart from the rest. The age of earth, wilderness, the societies of insects. The sound of 6 large explosions, MC's bodies found in a helicopter crash. As I'm coasting, a series of bizarre deaths that coincide with strange astrological phenomena. Cherokee and Choctaw, you're poisoned to death by a tomahawk. Threat stories, the crowd treks through the Amazon rainforest. Night vision technology, the shot that started the Great War was probably seen. Thrown from a man in broken MC's collar and spleen. Tank destroyers, elephant gun, dive bomber scream. I initiate psychoanalysis, where the uninvited die this year, the longest Halloween. After your battleship sinks, because of me, hundreds of fans survive in shark-infested waters. The sky strikes lightning, race to locate a device that will obliterate this Viking. A military plane and its crew disappear while investigating a UFO sighting. You are an incompetent commander who costs lives in your destruction. Incomparable war machines, a man is brutally attacked at night in his living quarters above his bar for dealing with corruption. The crowd investigates death cases on this production. I will give a king into the hands of his enemy if he can't be trusted. Of all supervillains, blood spilling to their descendants, the Divergent series Allegiant Diligence. I take over Fry's Electronics, consumer electronics company. I kill rappers in the countryside comfortably. Up shook, the place looks while I shatter your install messenger on Facebook. The death of Voltron, but he rises again from one of the world's biggest brooks. Tourist attraction, contraction, lightning action, causing a brain extraction. I do the exaction with fractions at your side distraction. You're impenitent, that means unrepentant. Obdurate, recusant. I murder you with all surgery inventions, abusive. I harass, laugh, and kill with chloroplast. Animal cells do not have chloroplast. I blast like a cannonball and explode. Great World War is taking place fast. I'm sharp-sighted at night, it's the discomfiture of titans. A robot monster frightening. I sock you through a diving helmet and you start crying. Well, what happens when I start rapping? Rappers shit themselves. Peace to Celts who rock pelts. You scream for help. I cause your musculophrenic artery to melt. Strong advocate of human rights like Eleanor Roosevelt. The rhyme explodes Orion's belt. No stealth, I'm overfelt. Where I dwelt, Darth
Vader knelt. From word spelt, collapse shelf. You wreck your car, crash dealt, and die in a seatbelt. I kill a couple MCs in a tunnel. You crumble, your interface is pummeled. Your girl stumbles. Rappers are troubled by heart attacks in a huddle. You're disgruntled, the ground conks out under you. An asteroid trudges your group. Galactus hovers above you and smothers you. There's no quizzing the fact that Holocaust is risen. I stiffen, the best rapper isn't. Wu-Tang commission business, women audition. Aerospace is chicken, dope hidden rappers give in. Listen, you've captured a pigeon in a shattered prison. There's no quizzing the fact that Holocaust is risen. I stiffen, the best rapper isn't. Wu-Tang commission business, women audition. Aerospace is chicken, dope hidden rappers give in. Listen, you've captured a pigeon in a shattered prison. Godzilla's the king of all monsters, great your bonkers, secret space launchers, boxers and daughters at my concert. I conquer doctors, gangsters haunter, dollars and honors, horror hunters ponder. Prehistoric lobsters and rap rosters, robbers, flying saucers, stronger sponsors, kill imposters. I explode dishwashers, rhymes like armed Navy helicopters over foreign waters. Peace to Cookie Monster, I comatose watchers who don't moniker. Mr. Commodore 64, the monitor auditor, blockbuster, too popular for gossipers. Gobbler of astrologers, omnivore orbiter, gravity softener, explosion vomiter, an astronomer who used a barometer, binocular to kill a biographer, radio interferometer author, resistance thermometer, destruction cinematographer, vinyl polymer. I kill rappers with a magnetometer and mass spectrometer, the interlocular goniometer photographer. I electronically chemically castrate MCs at kilometers, consular, foreigner, polar, forester, globular, mud wasp, sonar, heart donor. I colder solar explosion your molar, because of Arnold Schoenberg, your soul hurt. Kids rap along in strollers. The comptroller controller that drops on soldiers is steamroller. You have an odor. Industry dozer with a cola. I've captured the Joker's broker. Photovoltaic, the wind blower. Archaic, the owner. Mosaic and truth beholder. Ribonucleic motor. I kilowatt shoulders. Come closer. I smolder the president's folder with a flamethrower. There's no quizzing the fact that Holocaust is risen. I stiffen, the best rapper isn't. Wu-Tang commission business, women audition. Aerospace is chicken, dope hidden rappers give in. Listen, you've captured a pigeon in a shattered prison. There's no quizzing the fact that Holocaust is risen. I stiffen, the best rapper isn't. Wu-Tang commission business, women audition. Aerospace is chicken, dope hidden rappers give in. Listen, you've captured a pigeon in a shattered prison.
Every time I stop, it seems stuck. Soon as you try to step off the cannabis, the megalithic master craftsman, the closet meteorologist. Look at the clouds, a storm's coming. That's common sense. I think about this giant monstrosity. 10W40 blood viscosity, big enough to kill the whole colony. Block a low kiss on the oil leaking from the barrel drum. I did it all for dinosaur blood. The sky's falling, ocean levels rising from warming. Too much carbon, we all know the real causes. Jet planes in the skies are stalling. Dark night, riot squads are forming. Snakes are calling, rap jumping shit, but the water is boiling. Produce is spoiling, state of affairs appalling. Can't believe people still snoring. Wake up and stop yawning. Vengeance is mine in the morning. Speech, recognize speech. Mobile phone signals out of reach. Data plan says your talk is cheap. The king is a captive, trapped by his own inaction. Celebrated after global disaster. That's when Father Arthur Poor Parker was captured. His golden palace was collapsed amidst great ashes that were once wide green pastures where panthers, dragons, tigers, and rappers. He is but a man of minor stature, the megalithic master craftsman.
Futurism, writing abuse and lyrics. My opinion of your opinion is you can't be serious. Dubism and futurism, writing abuse and lyrics. My opinion of your opinion is you can't be serious. Dubism and futurism, writing abuse and lyrics. My opinion of your opinion is you can't be serious. Dubism and futurism, writing abuse and lyrics. My opinion of your opinion is you can't be serious.
My brain ain't getting enough oxygen. I built the robotic cannabis and now nobody's stopping us. Black hoodie in the streets, lumberjack fleece. The beast from the east by the thunderclap beats. Ability from the baggage, drop it. Hip hop is toxic. I administer the detox process all over the beat. I rap with my robot to feel complete. He can rap better than me. Not a hard thing to do to cut RTR loose. He gon' show every one of you he got the juice. love generation and healthy meditation. Cool, but I can't, so I shit my pants. I'm okay, I go sit over there. You go dance, have fun, go find romance. Can a matchbox man? No, but a tin can. Grant me the plow, I'ma fix this thing. Give me a mic, I might decline to sing. Living for lyric, layer for layer, prayer for prayer. They want the future thinking I'm a failure. Gotta write some bars essentially kept on cloud storage. Cause I ain't got the memory for it. I gotta do my best if I can barely pull my own weight. These the island stone face told me to wait. Strength of vitality, Darrow-eyed Indians dance for me. Half a dozen UFOs land from 7 billion minds. Couldn't control the mind of one, controlling solar flares coming from 50